Hey, everybody, welcome to Resiliency Radio, your go-to podcast for the most cutting-edge insights in integrative and functional medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Jill, and with each episode, we dive into the heart of healing and personal transformation. Join me as we interview renowned medical experts, thought leaders, and world transformers of all shapes and sizes. Today is no different. You are in for a real treat with Dr. Bruce Hoffman, who I'll introduce in just a moment. I've known Bruce in our field of integrative functional medicine. He's a practitioner from Canada for over 2 decades, and I am super excited for you to hear this interview today. So stay tuned. I promise it'll be a game changer for health and healing. Before I do, I just want to remind you about a couple of things. First of all, if you don't know, I have a wonderful Flatiron Functional Medicine Clinic in Louisville, Colorado. We are accepting new patients. We have an incredible PA, physician associate named Fawn, and a nurse practitioner named Hannah, and they are both trained under me. I work with them on all cases, and they're both accepting new patients. So if you have any interest in becoming a patient in my clinic, you can just call 303-993-7910 or visit jillcarnahan.com for information on the website, phone numbers, whatever information you might want to know. And we are, like I said, accepting patients at my clinic in Louisville, Colorado. Also, if you don't know, we have a full line of retail products at drjillhealth.com. Everything from supplements and nutritional protocols for Epstein-Barr virus, mast cell activation, tick-borne infections, complex chronic illnesses, fatigue, you name it, we've got it. And simple things like a great multivitamin or a qualified antihistamine. Our best seller is called Hist Assist. Patients love this product for their mast cell activation and to calm down the histamine response without making them feel drowsy. So please check it out at drjillhealth.com. That's our full retail store. And lastly, if you haven't checked out the book or the movie, you can see them on the website, jillcarnahan.com. But I especially want to mention the book, Unexpected. It was a bestseller, was released in 2023 and is available on Amazon or wherever you buy books. And you can find that book at readunexpected.com, Amazon, wherever you have found your books before, you'll find it there. Okay, guys, let's get on to the show and let me introduce Dr. Bruce Hoffman. Dr. Bruce Hoffman is a Calgary-based integrative functional medicine doctor practitioner. He is the medical director of the Hoffman Center for Integrative Medicine and the Brain Treatment Center of Alberta, specializing in complex medical conditions. He was born in South Africa and obtained his medical degree from the University of Cape Town. He also has a master's degree in clinical nutrition. He is a certified functional medicine practitioner, board certified with a fellowship in anti-aging medicine and regenerative medicine. He's a certified Shoemaker mode protocol practitioner, certified Ayurvedic practitioner, certified family constellation therapist, and IELTS trained in the treatment of Lyme disease and co-infections. He is a friend, a colleague, and a brilliant physician. He's co-authored a paper published by Dr. Lawrence Afrin's group on diagnosis of mast cell activation syndrome. And he is a treat. I know you'll enjoy this interview today. Let's jump right in with Dr. Bruce Hoffman. Dr. Bruce Hoffman, I have known of you for so many years, and we share mutual patients, even though you're in Canada and I'm in the US. And I have always had the deepest respect for how you do medicine and how you approach medicine so holistically. I think a lot of times, especially in the realm of functional medicine, although there's personalized and integrative and all these words, we lose the real touch with the soul and the energy and some of these things that I think are as much or more powerful than the supplements and the lifestyle. But before we go into all the stuff that you have in your new design for medical curriculum, I would love to hear a little bit about your story. Where did you grow up? How did you get the bug for medicine? What was your journey into this trajectory?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Jill. Thanks. Yeah, we do share a lot of patients in common, and we go to a lot of the same conferences, so we always bump into each other. Yes, I was born in South Africa into the apartheid regime, and went to school and had, various exposures when I was a younger person to the world of art and literature and music. And at high school there was a school teacher there by the name of Roger. And Roger was a sort of Renaissance man. He was kind of a maverick teacher who broke all the rules. And he sort of taught us about Jung and Advaita Hinduism and religion. and just exposed me to all sorts of interesting sort of dynamics. And I had a particular experience with him when I was 15, whereby he was teaching one day and he was talking about Christianity. And I was always in the back scowling. And I went out to him afterwards. I said, "You don't believe all that, do you?" And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, of course I do." And in that moment, I had what they call in spiritual traditions, mystical traditions, a so-called satori. A satori is when the world just opens up into its true nature, and everything shimmers with light, and you see all the order behind the illusion of the five senses. And that just happened, and that was also repeated later on in my life. And so those two experiences sort of catapulted me into curiosity. And then I became very interested in Hinduism, in poetry, in Jungian psychotherapy. I read Jung's book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, and it changed my life. And then then I went into art and I became a set builder in opera. And one day I was going to build sets in Johannesburg and the phone rang and it was my mother. She said, "Oh, by the way, you've got into med school." I said, "What are you talking about?
Wow.
What's med school?" She said, "No, I applied for you to go to med school." I said, "What? I want to be a poet. I want to go to San Francisco and hang out with the beats. I want to write." She said, "No, you're going to med school." So I said, "Okay." So I went to med school. I don't know what I was doing there. It was like a completely I was never left brain science and
Yeah.
I don't know. I did well at school, but it was all arts and humanities and geography and everything. So I ended up in med school, and I sort of took me 2 or 3 years to realize what I was doing, and then while I was there, and Roger was always very, I used to write to him and say, "Roger, I want to go to San Francisco. I don't want to do this." And he'd say, "No, the wheel will turn. You will see how this will serve you." And he gave me the list of all these great writers who'd been doctors. And so he said, "No, just stick it out." Anyway, so I stuck it out, graduated, ended up in the rural Saskatchewan, and became a family physician there. And truly, I really started to love being a doctor. I occupied the archetype, if you will.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, while I was doing that, I came across Larry Dossey,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
and Deepak, and
Yes.
all these great sort of alternative guys. And all of a sudden, I started to realize that all that I'd learned from a young boy up until then, even though I'd branched off into left brain medicine, all of a sudden this other world, the mysteries opened back up. And I realized through Larry Darcy and others, you could start to incorporate all of that into this trajectory of starting to help people. It didn't have to just be about the prescription pad and the protocols. And so then I went to meet Larry Darcy at a conference in the 80s, way back, way
Yes.
had dinner with him, and he just provoked this expansion of awareness. And then I studied with Deepak and David Simon and did lots of Ayurveda, then did Chinese medicine, and then blah blah blah. And then I just started to realize there's this whole vast area of possibilities with the human experience. And then later on, I met Dietrich Klinghardt and others,
Yes.
and he had developed a 5 levels of healing model, which was based on the Vedantic tradition. And I looked at his model. I said, "Dietrich, would you mind if I add 2 more levels?" And he said, "No, that's fine." So I added 2 more levels, and then I expanded that. And so I developed a 7 stages to health and transformation working model in dealing with complex, which we all come to, most of us now are treating chronic complex illness,
Yes.
people with multiple symptoms that nobody can make sense of. So I developed a 7 stage model, and within that 7 stage model is based on the Ayurvedic concept of koshas, or these bodies, the spiritual body, the soul body, the intellectual body, the emotional body, the electromagnetic body, the physical body with structure, and the world outside, the so-called environmental body. And I could started to work out where I could use that in treating complexity. So when a patient came in, I go, "Oh, okay, they have inherited family trauma,
Yes.
they have early developmental trauma, they have dental problems, they have nutritional problems, and they've been exposed to mold and Lyme disease. So you could put them into these categories and create order. And then I started to work out a hierarchy of treatment based on that. And so that led to the 7 stages to health and transformation model. And then recently, in the last 5 years or so, I started to expand that a little bit and started to add all the principles of biophysics
Hmm.
and circadian quantum biology. And once I did that and added that into the 7 stage model, it sort of revolutionized my patient outcomes. When I got people to relocate, to ground, to
Yes.
watch the early morning sun, to get a building biologist on their team as more important than I was,
Wow.
and then remediate their homes, blah, blah, do all the things that
Yes.
we now do in biophysics. That revolutionized outcomes. I mean, all my patients, I would say to them in November in Calgary when this
Yes.
UVB is gone and the sun's gone, you can't stay here. You've got to go to the tropics.
And
And
get
so they, would go to Mexico, or Mexico's not so great anymore, but Costa Rica and other places. And there, the mitochondria were revolution. The mitochondria kicked back online, along with the implication or the emphasis on biophysics
yeah.
was the emphasis on the cell danger response, as you know.
Yes, yes. That was
Mitochondria,
a big aha for all of us.
that
When numbers
big
come out
aha,
with that, we're like, oh, this pulls everything we've been
everything
talking about
together. Yeah.
together. Yeah.
That one diagram of Robert Naviaux,
Yes.
the stresses,
Yes.
they create this inflammatory response, which then goes into these cell danger responses. But the key to that map, which I realized after a while, was on the left, he said health cycle principles.
Yes.
You need to return the patient to the health cycle principles. And in the middle was salutogenesis.
Yes.
So you identified all the toxic load across all the layers and levels of the human. You did all your functional medicine tests because once the cell danger response was initiated, all these biochemical problems and cell membrane changes
Yeah.
occurred. So you did all your functional tests to see what is wrong. But the key was pulling out the health cycle principles and emphasizing those to patients before they went fancy, detoxifying or using supplements, which was the stresses and the salutogenesis part of the diagram.
Yes.
And then I expanded the health cycle principles beyond Naviaux's original 7. He had 7 things. I've
Yes.
got about
Yes.
20. So once
Oh,
I expanded that, emphasized that, then I could go back to my functional medicine training, look at the toxicology, look at what needed to be, introduced in order to turn on the right pathways and get them out of cell danger.
yeah.
And that's how I work now. Now I've developed a product, developed a curriculum called the New Medical Curriculum,
Yeah.
which I teach, which is based on those principles, you know?
I love this, and that's why I was so excited to have you on the podcast because I really feel like you are such a pioneer, and I can hear it in your story. First thing is that curiosity and that seeker spirit, right?
Yeah,
Which I think I have too. And those of us who are out there just really saying, what else is possible? What if everything we thought was true is not true? What if there's more? What if there's,
yeah,
because in our medical curriculum, I always talk about this in the podcast. You and I both know this, but many people listening, it's so narrow. It's so, so, so narrow on what is focused on drugs and surgery and interventions and not even all that, you know? And so we're really thinking of very different expansion. And what I love to restate what you just said is back even in the early functional days, we looked at biochemical processes that were disrupted. We looked at testing, we looked at the microbiome and the chemicals and all of that. And then we tried to intervene with lifestyle. And what you're saying is number one, there's a whole energetic, spiritual, ancestral, there's a lot of pieces
a lot
and
of pieces.
right that are absolutely foundational because if you have a story from an ancestral pattern that says I'm going to be ill or I'm in a victim role, you're never, no matter what intervention you or I do, and until you retell your story or change your identity, like identity is so core. And what I saw in my early, I've been doing this over 20 years, kind of like you. And in the early days, it was easy to change and switch maybe a thyroid condition or a hormone condition. And what's happened now is this invisible toxic load, whether it's emotional stress, lack of connection, true toxicity from mold or other chemicals, lack of sunshine, all of these basic things that the human mitochondria and cells need to survive.
Right.
It's this thing that's happening that people are just literally drowning and they don't even realize it. It's like the frog in the pot slowly
Yeah.
cooking, right? So
Yeah.
they're like, I don't feel well, and
Yeah.
they come to you and I want to supplement, and there's so much more than that.
Yeah.
So I think what I also hear you saying is it's all about the inputs, and we start with clean air, clean water, clean food, clean mindset, clean trauma. Like it's more of those, well, how do we live well than just throw a band-aid, even with supplements
Yeah.
and things, right? Do you want to go more into that? Because I think that this broadening of our view of illness is so critical.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that sort of always emerge out of this process is, that cliche, you can't get better in the same environment that you got sick in.
Yes.
That is such a truism, and it's so difficult for people, you know. The other truism is you can't get well with the same narrative that made you sick in the first place. If you have the same 60,000 thoughts a day that you had when you first came in
Yes.
without expanding consciousness, you very seldom can't affect downstream outcomes. And the key understanding, which I learned this from Dietrich Klingon, when you work at the higher levels, they affect the lower levels.
Yes.
Like they trickle down and they reorganize through coherence, biochemical outcomes. But when you give protocols at the lower levels, it does nothing to treat the upstream stresses. So you've got to, I've learned to work at the higher levels first and relocate into a more
Hmm.
biophysically compatible environment that doesn't include all the non-native EMFs and all the indoor air pollutants and all the food and all the rest of it. So relocation, rewrite the narrative, the internal dialogue through multiple means, and that's a tricky one
Hmm.
because there's many ways to do that. Functional medicine pays lip service to it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really call it out.
Yes.
Give it, this is your internal dialogue. This is your victim consciousness.
Yeah.
Here's where you can change this, how you can cognitively reframe it, and then you can retrain your amygdala to not have the downstream effects on your HPA axis. So you want to concretize it, give directions, and give a hierarchy of treatment for everybody, of which is completely different. Some people
Yeah.
start with early trauma, some people start with inherited trauma, some people need to start with dentistry.
Yes.
Some
Yes.
people need to, but I do know relocation, either relocate to more uh, to
Coherent.
climates that have more ability to restart the mitochondria, or relocate out of inner city environments,
Hmm.
or remediate your internal home environment. So that was key. And then the
Let's
whole
stop
piece
and talk there real quick because I think that relocation is such a big deal. Obviously, I
such a
treat a ton of mold-related illness, and people might be thinking, "Oh, if I have mold in my home, I either remediate or relocate." But it's way bigger than that, right? Because you're talking about we're all in these little boxes, and many times boxes and cities upon boxes, and then you throw in the electromagnetic. Do you want to just, for someone who really doesn't understand, I get exactly what you're saying, but I want to think about that listener is like, well, what's the big deal about my condo or apartment? What things are you seeing that are affecting people that they don't know in their home or their workplace?
Well, just indoor living,
Hmm.
right? Indoor living. If you think about it, we solar panels, we meant to live on solar
Yes.
battery
Yes.
driven effects. And so what do? We avoid the sun, we put on sunglasses, we use sunscreen. We go indoors. We under extremely toxic environments, LED lights, fluorescent lighting, rubber-soled shoes, opening the fridge whenever we feel hungry. We've completely disconnected to the cycles of nature. It's appalling
Yes.
and it's diabolical and it's transformative when you get it.
Yeah.
When you realize you've got to take yourself out from your indoor environment, you've got to watch the sunrise. You got to get, the UVA. You
Yes.
got to get the UVB. You got to ground. You got to hydrate. You got to have circadian consistency. So all the clocks that come, Ayurveda taught us this 3,000 years ago. We got internal clocks. They're all linked by the sun and dark cycles. So just getting out from indoors to the outside, grounding with sun and circadian consistency will shift your biochemistry dramatically. And then you get a building biologist to come in
Yes.
and a mold remediation person, which and they say that 25% of people respond to mold, and not all the homes. Most homes are just indoor living is, the Wi-Fi router, the electrical supply behind your bed that
Yeah.
interferes with your
Mhm.
8 to 12 hertz alpha rhythm, the 60 AC hertz behind your bed at night, your box spring mattress, all these things that we know about. Um, a building biologist in to clean
Mhm.
up the electrical fields, the magnetic fields, the dirty electricity, um, and the Wi-Fi fields. And that, I mean, I can't tell you how many people just doing that, living outside, getting out of indoors, remediating. You don't have to do all the rest of the functional medicine stuff. It all just
Yeah.
sort of becomes coherent because the signaling becomes coherent. We are literally electromagnetic beings,
Yes.
and we live on sun, and we live on dark night cycles. Our visible, our senses can only sense 0.005 of the electromagnetic spectrum. Everything else out there affects us, but
Yeah.
we can't see it, so we don't think
Right.
it exists. It exists, and it can be highly damaging. And this is not sort of hyperbolic new age nonsense. This is real.
Oh, the
People are,
science is so like when you really look, if anyone wants to look into this, it is well documented. I couldn't agree.
well documented.
Yeah.
And when people say, "Oh, I'm too sick to do any of it," well, you're too sick to not do
Not
it.
to, exactly.
This is going to change your outcome.
Yeah.
Change your lifestyle by following these principles. I've just come back from El Salvador,
Uh-huh.
and I went to go and look at all these, hang out with the mitochondriacs,
Oh, I love it.
all these people who are sick.
Yeah.
And they know that it's based on the fact that they solar batteries that need to reconnect to nature. So they get up at 6 o'clock when the sun comes up.
Uh-huh.
They go to the beach till about 11.
Oh,
They walk in the water and they lie there reading books and things. They swim.
wow.
They go to bed at 6:30. 6:30, the whole place is shut down.
When the sun goes down, right?
And
Of
the sun
course.
goes
Like
down.
exactly how we should. Those like, yeah.
Oh, everything's Ethernetted. There's no Wi-Fi
Yeah.
anywhere. And these people recover their
Yeah.
mitochondria. They move out of cell danger and they move back to health cycle principles. And there's lots of them, like many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to take a look and check it out. And probably buying a property in El Salvador to move there for 6 months of the year just to
Wow.
live these principles.
Hey guys, just interrupting for a quick moment of your time to let you know that my documentary, award-winning documentary that came out a year or so ago is now available on Amazon Prime. You can watch the trailer if you're interested in seeing more about it at drpatientmovie.com. Again, drpatientmovie.com. Check it out. You can watch it for free with commercials on YouTube or Tubi, or you can pay for a copy to own on Vimeo. Anyway, check it out. Let me know what you think, and let's get back to the show with Dr. Bruce Hoffman. Yeah, the problem is right now, there's not many places in the US where we can actually get away, whether it's, I mean, even just the food supply is so contaminated, the water supply, the air quality. And I think Crinan used to say 80% of the toxic load is the air that we breathe. And people are so oblivious to this that they're walking around wondering why they don't feel well. They attribute it to aging or whatever other
Yeah,
excuses. And the
yeah,
truth is, we can live so much more vibrantly if we are in touch. I know for me, one of the ahas has been as I travel to Europe or other international destinations once in a while, the jet lag is non-existent for me because I use light and I use food and I'm incredibly diligent about that and I protect myself from the EMFs on the
yeah.
plane and stuff. And I don't have jet lag because my body just knows that circadian rhythm, but I give it because it's a good analogy though, because what I have to do is go counter to the culture. The culture is you get on the plane, you have your meal, all this stuff happens. I go completely counter. I put on
You
my
turn
red.
on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, exactly. I have my silver blanket at times, whatever it is like, and I'm like, don't feed me right now. And then when everybody else is sleeping and it's time to get up, I'm like, turn on my lights, get on my, all that stuff. But it's just, even on a plane, which is a metal tube that has a lot of Wi-Fi, I can still shift that so quickly and
Yeah,
easily,
yeah,
because my body's in tune with the light
yeah,
and the
yeah,
energy that gives it the signals
yeah.
to wake up or go to sleep.
Yep. And it really is like that. And
Yeah,
it's not, it's not hyperbolic, and it's not, if people start to really get the importance of this piece,
yeah.
they change their outcomes. They don't need to struggle as much.
It does. And you know what I love that you're saying, and you and I are aligned on this. Granted, I have a PMF mat, I have grounding sheets, I have all kinds of great tools that help me achieve this in my box that's kind of toxic, which is my home, right? However, if we really could live in El Salvador or somewhere where we had this access to nature, we wouldn't need all these expensive biohacking
No,
tools. That's all a construct because we have to try to figure out how to deal, and it's at best mediocre, right?
it's mediocre and it creeps up on you and it takes over consensual reality to the point that you feel that there's nothing you can do about it. You're powerless. You're a victim of this encroaching geoengineering and
Yeah,
everything, Wi-Fi and
right.
5G. All of a sudden you feel like desperate. What the and you know, what am I going to but unless you empower yourself with an intention
Yes.
to change the outcome. It's all through intention and attention that you can shift out of that victim consciousness. I'm moving back to South Africa in 3 weeks
Wow.
because I know living here for 9 months with no UVB or very little is not conducive to the amount of time I have left on planet Earth. I've
Yeah.
got to charge my battery. So
Yeah.
I'm going to South Africa for the summer,
Uh-huh.
and then for the South African winter, I'm going to El Salvador. I'm
Wonderful.
having to live what I now know to be true and now not to be hyperbolic. You have to make these radical shifts to stay abreast of this encroaching sort of, wave of
Oh,
toxicity that's just ubiquitous. And it's not, again, I say this is not hyperbolic,
right.
you
That's
know,
right. So I
it's
have go ahead.
anyway,
No,
we
no,
speak
no. I
the same
completely
language.
agree. I was just thinking yesterday, I had this sweet patient I've seen for a long time and probably more than I've ever seen her before. And I want to kind of talk to the person like this. Everything I said, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't. And it was simple things like, let's try breath work, let's try vagal nerve stuff,
Yeah.
let's try, sleeping. And everything I mentioned, there was this, I can't. And I realized none of these protocols have anything. We have to change this mindset. So starting at that top of identity, illness, the spiritual connection, the ancestral, what would you talk? So say you had this patient, she's 23 years old, and her whole narrative is I can't get well. How do you start with this patient?
I have a lots of those people. In the
Yes.
course I'm teaching over 70 doctors right now how to approach complexity with that attitude.
Yes.
It's every 2 weeks when I teach, I get asked that question.
Yeah.
So my response to that is to ask the patient, how do you think I can best help you? Just put it back because people have projection of will. You the expert,
Yeah.
they paying you money. They go, I'm going to sit back and do nothing
Yeah.
while you sweat and tell me how to fix
Yeah.
myself. That's called projection of will. Then you often compound that with high resistance. They
Hmm.
don't do anything. They're very
Yes.
resistant because they're highly traumatized in many
Yes.
cases, and they're resistant to any interventions.
Yeah.
So you have to reframe it to them and say, how can, knowing what I know, because you know my CV,
Yeah.
how can I best help you? What do you feel I can best help you achieve?
Oh,
Of all
beautiful.
these possibilities, how can I best help you transform and get them to do the homework?
Yeah.
If they come up with, I don't think you can, then your relationship is probably over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But if they have a little inkling of something that just sparks them, well, they say, well, maybe we can work on my diet first.
Yeah.
And if you feel that you can work on their diet appropriately without you knowing that it's not going to shift the needle that much,
Yeah.
but at least it's something, they've given you permission to enter into their psyche. Because people, there's two levels of defense in individuals. There's the Freudian intellectual ego defenses, and then there's soul defenses. And soul defenses are that part of the human being that will not let you get anywhere near them because of trauma, and they'll protect their innocence at all costs. So you've got to know whether you're dealing with first line defense or second
Ego
line
or
defense.
soul.
And is there an opening where you can enter their psyche? So you have to ask their permission and see, you know,
Yeah.
if they will let you in. If they won't let you in, I think the relationship is somewhat over, you know,
I think that's
realistically.
yeah, a really good point because there are some people that really may seek our help and ultimately they're not ready. And I think part of our job is to assess readiness and be so kind and compassionate and loving and give that unconditional positive regard
Yeah.
space for them to heal. But like you said, sometimes the kindest thing is saying, you know what? I don't think you're ready, and I'm here, but why don't
Or
you call me when you're ready?
I wouldn't say I don't think you're ready. I would
Mhm.
say um, if they don't have an entry, I would say I don't know how I can help.
Ah, that's good. Because then maybe they
If,
have an
if,
idea that you could be open to if they,
yeah, because
yeah.
if they say, "Oh, you said I'm not ready," and then they'll give you a defense. Of course, I'm.
Gotcha. Right, right. I love that. What about the soul level, this trauma? So we didn't go too deep into this, but you and I both know, and this is where, for me, functional medicine has blown itself open, and it's like the 20% effectiveness of the other things. To me now, it's about really dealing with these higher level issues because what I see is absolute transformation when someone deals with their story or their ancestral patterns or those trauma pieces.
Yeah,
But you mentioned soul and trauma when people are completely closed off due to trauma. How
yeah,
do you address that person where you, as an intuitive healer, you see there's been massive trauma, and you want to reach them? Where do
yeah.
you start with that?
Well, I use that Porges's, ventral vagal, dorsal vagal, sort of,
Hmm.
which is the equivalent of the cell danger
Yes.
response. You know,
Isn't
the
that neat? It does go on all levels, doesn't it? We have this
yeah,
biology of the cell danger, but we see it on soul, spiritual side, like all of your levels.
all
Hmm.
the levels. Yeah. The healing ingredient is trust, as and many of these people with chronic complex illness have had traumatic upbringings to some extent. The ACE studies with,
Yes.
all the trauma creating all the adverse health outcomes. So unless you can establish ventral vagal trust with the individual, you're not going to succeed in that therapeutic relationship. Now, doctors have two archetypes they love to occupy: the hero archetype and the healer archetype.
Yeah.
If you too much hero, that person is not going to ever enter into a dialogue with you. You're not going to establish ventral vagal. And ventral vagal trust is through the eyes, the smile,
Yeah.
the tone of voice, the connection. Do you actually sit in that person's space and actually create limbic resonance with them, which is often for the first time that they've ever established limbic resonance with anybody, any particularly, like, because people will project onto you the parental archetype, the mother or father, the good or bad parent, and unless you actually come back with limbic resonance and create a trusting environment that recapitulates, which was probably not established in the first 2 years of their existence, you've got no hope of entering into a therapeutic alliance with that person. So the first thing is establishing ventral vagal, relatedness and getting some sort of therapeutic, and that's listening, and that's doctor as healer,
Yes.
not doctor as hero. And that's what I have against functional medicines. People come in, I got mold, I got Lyme. Okay, you take a 5-minute history. Oh,
Yeah.
you got Lyme. Oh, you got a urine mycotoxin test, and you got one antibody positive. Okay, here's the protocol.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
We must stop all that.
Yes.
Who is this person?
Yes.
What is their narrative? Where do they come from? Even that functional antecedents, triggers, and mediators, essential to know their timeline,
Yeah.
essential to get to know the internal dialogue and their narrative and see what's hidden in their system, which is asking to be brought to consciousness, because symptoms are nothing other than teleological. They bring to awareness that which is unconscious, which needs to be looked at consciously. And the doctor as healer must have the skill set to know how to approach that dynamic, which is complicated because people have limited time, limited funds. So how do you do all this? It's difficult. But I do 2 to 3 hour intakes.
Yeah, that's
And
what's
I'm
amazing because I know the kind, and I also know not only do you do this soul spiritual, creating a space for healing, like all this stuff we've been talking about, because I know we share patients, I know how effective you are in this, and you're like the top 1%, Dr. Hoffman, you really are. But you also, I have had patients again shared the amount of testing you do too is amazing. Like you
I cover the whole functional
do, you
medicine
do,
gamut.
you
And
do.
I got heavily criticized for it
Oh,
for years, for
uh,
15 years.
yeah.
Why do you test so much? Look, that stupid saying, you can't manage what you can't measure.
Right, right.
I learned very soon. If I just jumped in with 1 or 2 tests, I wasn't helping anybody.
Right.
So I looked across the full domain of toxicology and biochemistry. And I looked across, the
Yes,
dentistry, the
yes,
brain functioning, the stress responses, the family system. I looked across all of these things and tested everything I
Yeah.
could. And I used to test, extensively. And that would take me like 3 hours at home to look through all the
To go
tests.
through.
Then 2 hours with the patient,
Yeah.
teaching them each of the
Yeah.
tests, what it meant,
Right.
then giving them a protocol across the 7 levels of healing as to how best to approach it. It required dedication. And that was just what I discovered for myself. That is how I was most effective.
I couldn't agree
Yes,
more because I think it's really, really important. And then the foundational thing that you mentioned, and I'm loving that you're teaching physicians. And
yeah,
I wonder, how do we teach that unconditional positive regard, that creation of a safe structure for that patient to enter into, and that limbic resonance that you talk about? To me, that is the secret at the core
secret.
of what we do. Like, if I'm a good healer, that has to be in place. But
Yeah.
how do we as physicians even teach other physicians that thing? Because that thing is almost only through witness or observation. It's not, I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, just having done it for 35 years now, it's a process of coming to that understanding. I'm trying to teach it to the doctors I'm teaching, how to approach it. So I have the 7 stage model, I
Yes,
have the new medical curriculum, and I have hierarchy of treatment, what you do first and what you do second and what you do third,
perfect. Hmm.
depending on it. But it's the mystery of this therapeutic alliance it's when you're listening to a patient and they're telling you their story, you'll see gaps. You'll see, particularly if they're very well, many patients are now patient advocates. They know a lot
Yeah,
and they'll come with their story, but you'll see, oh, all the mold stuff, and you'll see gaps in the mold story. Then they'll come with the diet stuff and the salicylate free and
yeah,
histamine free and the mast cell. Then you'll see a few gaps and you look at their diet. So what you do is you're just filling in from your background
yeah,
little pieces that they missed maybe.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Do you
then once you give that back to them, they go, "Oh my God, I've been seen and heard for the very first time." No, and you must be so intuitive. No, I just have studied my whole life. I went to every conference I could for 20 years.
right?
I just have a
Yeah,
very vast working understanding of what needs to be plugged into this mystery.
pieces.
Yeah.
So one thing I hear you saying that I think is so core and I found personally to be effective is you're listening really carefully and giving them
Listen,
a space to really, really share stuff they've maybe never shared.
share, yeah.
And the piece that I think is so powerful is you're almost retelling their story in a way that they can, for the first time, see, oh, they get an aha. Talk about that, because I know when I heard you just say that, you and I experience the same thing. When we can really listen and say, I see this. Does this resonate with you? And they
Yeah,
just light up because you've
yeah,
solved a mystery that they couldn't figure out. And then that story gives them a framework,
right.
because once they have the story, they can change the identity and live differently, right?
Absolutely.
Talk
Now,
about that, because I
many
feel,
of them will have, but you've got to listen very carefully because if you give them a glib sort of
yeah.
um, you know, explanation of something that you learned on Instagram from
Right.
some psychologist the day before, they're going to see that phony. You got to
Yeah.
you got to truly listen and find out what's not being said in that. What is silent in that system,
Mhm.
and that can only come for the healer physician having a not 1,000 tool in his toolkit, but truly having some not only external knowledge, but knowledge of their own interiority, of their own unconscious dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you in tune with your own unconscious dynamics, your shadow, your projection, your family system, your myths, your archetypes, you can resonate with people as they tell their story and fill in the gaps. So some people will come and tell you, "Oh, I've done lots of trauma work and I've forgiven my father." And then you take more of the history and you realize there's no way that they have even come close to seeing that they are half their father, half their mother. And they still have resentment to their father. They don't have appreciation for their father for having given them life.
Yes.
And if they truly don't acknowledge that they owe their life to their father, and that's all, the rest didn't happen. You didn't get everything else, but you got life from your father. So have you thanked your father for giving you life?
Wow. Yes.
And they don't get, then they get it. They go, "Oh my God. Oh my God, I got life from my father." I say that your only responsibility is to say yes to your father. And now, if cognitively you've got all sorts of charges against him because it was this or that, you can deconstruct that by using, I use the DeMartini method to deconstruct cognitive reframing. So you see, and that is basically everything's always in order. It's never out of order. Your lower mind will always think, wants pleasure and avoids pain. But in the pain, there's pleasure. In the pleasure, there's pain. You just got to reframe it. So that father who was the alcoholic and didn't see you, you start to own the traits that he had. You start to see that he had the other side. You start to see how you benefited from those traits, and you start to cognitively reframe your whole charge you had against your father. And all of a sudden, your HPA axis goes into parasympathetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you see the perfect order that you've always had, and you just say yes to your life. And then the downstream, then the energy can flow.
Mm.
But when you're
Oh,
so entangled into all these stories and narratives and resentments, and I wish it was this way, and victim, who's the psychiatrist? What's her name? Shetty Brogan. There's only one disease: victim consciousness.
oh, that's so good and so important, again, for us to recognize and then gently call them to something greater. And what
Just
I hear in that is resistance is the problem, right? Like we totally resist, and it's just like I always think of like in a car accident, the person who's like resisting bracing, they get hurt really bad. And that poor alcoholic that's like, and they get in a car accident, they don't usually get hurt because they're not resisting. They're not even conscious of that. And there's a piece of you teaching these patients and myself as well, to let go of that resistance, because that's the hard part.
but they often need to be taught
Yeah.
that there's a reframing
Yes.
possible.
Yes.
And so the resistance is survival. They're creating survival instinct.
Yes.
But if they just look at it this way, then the resistance drops
Yeah.
and they open up the life force. The orders of love start flowing through the family system down to their physiology. So they're not resisting because they're resisting as a personality defect. They're resisting because they just don't know another narrative.
Yes.
And if you can reframe that narrative, it opens up those are the aha moments where the people just weep, they cry.
Yes.
I
Yes.
never saw it that way. I get it. And they change outcomes.
And this is where the philosophy, the spirituality, and even us, I heard in your narrative there, we have to be very in tune with our own projections and our own self and do our own work. And I think as you teach the physicians, we have to do the work first, because we can't come with that love and that acceptance and that total lack of our self getting in the way, right? Until we do the work around our issues. And only then can we come with this space that's the space for the
Or
patient,
space. Yeah,
right?
yeah. All my patients do Myers-Briggs, they do
Yes.
Ayurvedic doshas, and they do Diane Poole-Heller's attachment styles. And so I get them, and I teach
Oh,
that to my doctors,
yeah.
is if you don't know your Myers-Briggs typology and somebody walks in with the opposite, you're gonna get your back.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
If you
Or
don't
they
know your
want, I
own,
always joke about my engineers and my accountants. I know exactly. They need the spreadsheets and they need like, and the other ones are, needing a more creative. So I know there's some that like they need for me, I'm more apt to say, well, we could do it this way or this way and give them choices. But some of them, they need.
yeah, they'll run for the hills. She doesn't know. She's wishy-washy. She does, I need to know she's the best with the best handout and the
Right,
best
right,
furniture and the best
right.
protocol. If she's not the best, I'm out of there.
And there's no two or three per day. It's two times a day at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. or whatever it is. Very clear. I love that because yeah, get us getting to know them and then trying to meet them in their space.
Yeah.
Wow, there's so much powerful information here, and I love that you're doing this to take all the stuff you've done. And it's so amazing to hear your background, Bruce, because it makes perfect sense. You truly are like a philosopher at heart, and you
Well,
can see that.
I wanted to do it, be a psychiatrist. I only went. I know my mother applied for med school because she heard me say I want to be a psychiatrist, and she said, "Well, you're not going to be a psychiatrist as a poet." So she applied behind my back, and I got accepted to be a
Um,
psychiatric resident.
Yeah. Oh,
I
and
got
you ended up doing
accepted.
family medicine though, right?
I
With
did family medicine and I
uh,
applied for psychiatric resident. I got accepted,
yeah.
and I wanted to be not only a psychiatrist, but a Jungian analyst and a psychiatrist. I
Wow.
got accepted for both. But by that time, I'd discovered Larry Dossey and Deepak and Chinese medicine and German biology. And I was just too fascinated. I just wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
So I refused the residency. And I never became the Jungian analyst, but I still use it all. I use Jungian analysis all the time
Yeah.
as one of the things we look at, you know.
So powerful. And like I said, I want to get back to, and we're going to be sure if you're listening, Dr. Hoffman has a course now for it's physicians only. Is it
No,
mostly?
it's patient advocates and
Okay,
physicians.
okay, perfect.
Uh, the physicians sometimes get a bit, so they want to be exclusive, but I've got so many good patient advocates that know so much,
Yes.
and they benefit from knowing the levels and layers and the new medical curriculum that they're part of the course. But I'm going to be doing a mentorship as well to physicians. So
Excellent.
the fundamental will be the course, which is 10 weeks,
Okay.
2.5 hours, and there's 10 of them, 11 of them, with Q&As. And then I'm going to do a mentorship program for the graduates so that I can mentor them through complex cases.
Wow, this is tremendous because we need your knowledge and wisdom in the world. And I kind of love that you're, are you retiring from clinical practice and going full time into teaching and mentoring?
Full-time into teaching, retired from clinical practice. The College of Physicians and Surgeons took one look at me and have been pursuing me relentlessly for 10 years, you know, trying to get me shut down and not do
Wow.
private medicine and not do private testing. And I just, you know what? I'm on, you know, I got this many years left. I'm going to go and do what I love to do,
Yes, yes.
which
And
is
you're
teach.
going to make a difference because physicians are so hungry because they intuitively know. I've seen over and over when I'm giving a lecture, like the light turn on where they're like, oh, wait, there's something different because at some soul level, they know that the toolbox they have is too small and they're getting these patients they don't know what to do with, right?
Yeah.
For us to give them a bigger toolbox and an expanded idea of what it means to be a healer, I cannot think of any greater work in the world. Like that's,
The whole movement from doctor as hero to doctor as healer, that archetypal shift, that's the new medical curriculum. And you know that Ann Walton from Walmart has
yeah.
started a medical university in Arkansas teaching a new medical curriculum based on this new understanding with art therapy and everything else thrown in. I just saw that in Time magazine 2 months ago and I was freaked out. I was like, she's taking my curriculum.
Yeah, maybe you can be part of it. And that's just amazing. You're right, though. I do see it shifting because 20 years ago it was so like I was the, just like you. And I'm wondering too, you're in Canada, I'm in US. I feel like there's still a lot of persecution, if I can say it that way, of what we do, but it's way better than it was for me at least 20 years ago. Has Canada been more difficult, like just because of the socialized care? Have you been more ostracized because of that?
Very much so. You
Yeah.
know, you know that thing I just said about trust?
Yeah.
I was teaching ICI lecture on this thing, and I said the key ingredient for the healer is trust,
Mhm.
and I had a 5 minute segment on it. They went after me, and they took that extract of my talk, and they put it on. They went to the national newspaper CTV, and they said, "Take a look at this. He's getting patients to trust him, so that he can exploit them when they're so desperate for healing with functional medicine, which is snake oil salesmen."
Unbelievable.
They
It's
took
like,
the they took the core of my work and
yeah.
flipped it into opportunism and
Oh.
skullduggery. And it was just appalling. And that's when I realized I can't win this battle. I got to move on. I'm no victim. I use it as
No.
transformative, you know.
You do, and then you're like again, I want to say publicly, I know all the people in our spheres, and you are in the top at least 1%, if not 0.1% of the who I respect and who I believe is really, really making a change. And the fact that you're going on, because I don't think there's any greater work. We can only see so many patients in clinic, especially the hours that we spend, right? I'm at my limit too, and I love it. I won't ever stop that. But the power is teaching the teachers and influencing the influencers in a way that really transforms and giving them the aha so that they can sit in front of patients and do what you're doing. So I kudos to you for doing
Oh,
that.
thank you, Joel. I appreciate it coming from you because you're out there lecturing and doing all of this as well. So the fact that I have your endorsement on this means a lot to me. Thank you.
100%. I've always seen, and I've seen you got this, and now it makes sense because, like I said, the poet, the philosopher, I really believe, I mean, there's so much of a left brain medical sciences that when we go in there, and I remember being in that system not knowing enough to trust my intuition, but it got squashed out because I just didn't have enough value for my own way of being.
Yeah.
And I became this very analytical left brain bioengineer kind of person. And then when I realized, oh, wait, there's power in my intuitive process. There's power in love. There's power in energy. There's power in all the things we're talking about,
Yeah.
maybe more so than the biochemical pathways, or at least equal to.
Well,
And
I was very fascinated and in love with, I wanted to be a surgeon when I was a very young doctor.
wow.
I love the left brain. And
Yeah.
I say, let the doctors be the doctors. Let them keep doing that. I love that sort of
Yes.
precision and that analytical exactitude. I have no problem with it, but don't stop me from being this
Right.
other type.
Yeah. And I
This,
think there are a lot of people who can't exist with both. That I think that's the dichotomy, right? Like I've gotten comfortable existing and having an intuitive hit where I know at a deep level where to go and I have no logical
yeah,
explanation.
yeah,
And then I'll take that intuitive direction and use the
yeah,
science and the testing to make sure that both are in
yeah.
concert with the direction. But I think teaching doctors how to trust that intuitive healer part and to do the work in themselves first
Yes,
is so crucial. So yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, gosh, we're gonna, if you're listening, we'll be sure and leave links and everything in the show notes of where you can find Dr. Hoffman's course and all of that. But where do you see there's just so much going on with our environment, with the toxic load on every level, and then with the disconnect in medicine? Where is the hope for our future? What are the things that you see as the most positive in changing the way we do medicine?
Well, I had my own health scare. I had an aortic aneurysm, right? And I had to have an open heart surgery. So I realized that going to work every day in the dark, you're working under fluorescent light in front of, and then going home at night for 30 years probably contributed to the aneurysm.
Yeah.
So I needed to take control of my own fate. So the future of medicine doesn't lie. I mean, you can keep doing all those fantastic things that people do, and you can keep expanding all that, but that isn't where healing happens. Healing is going to be part of people taking personal responsibility, removing themselves from consensual reality, not shopping at Safeway, not going indoors, for 9 months of the year. They have to educate, extract, and create a new paradigm for themselves. And that's the future of health and healing. It's getting away from that which is so man-made and so obviously overwhelming our mitochondria. Our mitochondria are sentient beings.
Yes.
They are the receptors that take in nature. And if we don't give them the right fuel by plugging back into the cycles of nature, we are doomed species. Truly, and that's not hyperbolic either.
No, I agree. We're on this
We've got too
trajectory.
far.
Right. So last question or two before we wrap up. What are your, I mean, you've talked about putting your action where your words are and you're moving and you're changing your life. But
Yeah.
what about just day to day before you move in this life you've been in the office? What would be the top three habits that you feel like are so core to survival at this moment?
Getting up with the sun.
Okay.
I do that every day and have done for 2 years. Sunrise, I'm outside for sunrise. Grounding, less so in winter, but I have grounding shoes. So I walk the dogs with grounding shoes. Grounding is number two. Um, Eating local, seasonal. So with circadian knowledge in not eating after sundown, biggest meal at breakfast, lunch, a little bit of supper, not eating after 6 o'clock, which was hard for me. I used to
Yeah.
like there's a South African delicacy called biltong. I used to like to eat biltong. So I had to stop some of that. So early morning sun, grounding, circadian consistency. And every morning when after I've got up with the sun, come indoors, I do my own health routine, and then I go in front of red light therapy for 20 minutes every morning.
Yeah.
And because of my cardiovascular stuff, so the red light therapy is important. And then hydration.
Yeah.
Hydration is crucial. We have the water that's, vortexed and
Yes.
anime wand, and we use spring aqua. We use very, very clean water. We take water very, very seriously.
I love that because I think people don't realize how contaminated the typical tap water is.
And
So
I use deuterium depleted water personally.
yes,
Yeah.
excellent. It sounds very familiar because this morning I go out to water my plants, east sun. As soon as the sun comes up, I have that in my eyes. Then I go and drink a large glass of electrolyte, mineral-rich water, and then I sit in front of my red light. So I
I think we do
totally
the
agree
same
with you.
thing.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
Dr. Hoffman, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to talk to you today, and I hope more
Thank you,
people
Joe.
hear about your curriculum. So we'll get those websites, we'll have them linked. You're certainly welcome to say them if you know them. Otherwise, we'll just link them in the notes. Is it,
Yeah, I don't know. One of these things I don't know anything about
It
the
looks like
names or anything.
drbrucehoffman.com, seven stages landing. Yeah, Dr. Bruce Hoffman is where I think, and we'll make sure and list that in the show notes, but we'll make sure and have that for everybody. Once again, just thank you. I am so grateful for your work in the world, and I'm glad that you're teaching other doctors. Hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that insightful interview with Dr. Bruce Hoffman. He has always been someone I've admired and always learned from when I hear him teach and just really excited to see how he's impacting the world with his curriculum. So check that out on drbrucehoffman.com. And hey guys, if you haven't yet subscribed, we are nearing 700,000 subscribers on YouTube. Please do join all of those who have already subscribed. Click that button and click the bell to be notified of future episodes. If you're driving or listening in your car, you can listen on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite audio podcast. And we'd love if you stop by and leave us a review there. It helps us reach more people and get great guests on our show like Dr. Hoffman. And once again, guys, just thank you again for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again next week for a new episode on Resiliency Radio.